Gene Autry was the singing cowboy America trusted. He had the voice, the smile, the movies, the records, and the kind of fame most stars only dream about. On screen, he looked honest, calm, and larger than life. He was the cowboy hero families welcomed into their homes. But away from the spotlight, his life was not as clean as the image suggested. There were 2 marriages, no children, quiet rumors, private heartbreak, and questions that followed him long after the cameras stopped rolling. Then there was Gale Davis, the Western actress tied to one of the most talked-about chapters of his private story. And just this year, a newly unearthed private letter from Davis to a close friend auctioned by Heritage Auctions in Dallas for $18,000 has reignited the conversation. In it, she wrote candidly, "Gene was 2 men. The one the world loved, and the one who loved me in secret. I never regretted it, but I carried the weight alone." Join us as we uncover Gene Autry's rise, his complicated love life, and the private whispers behind the cowboy image. The singing cowboy with a secret shadow. Gene Autry looked like the kind of man America could trust. He wore the white hat, sang the clean songs, smiled for families, and made the cowboy life feel safe. But his real story began far away from that shiny image. Orvin Grover Autry was born on September 29, 1907, near Tioga in Grayson County, Texas. He came from a poor farm family. His father, Delbert Autry, worked as a horse trader, but money was often short. His mother, Alnora Osmond, was sick for much of her life, so worry was inside the home from the start. Gene was also the grandson of William T. Autry, a strict Baptist preacher. That meant church, hymns, rules, and strong lessons about right and wrong were part of his early world. Around 1918, when Gene was about 11, his father went to prison for bootlegging and served about 2 years. That left the family in deeper trouble. Gene had to grow up fast. By the time he was 6, he was already doing farm work. By 1921, he was shining shoes and sweeping barbershops for pennies. He also worked on farms, stacking hay in hard heat. This was the world that shaped him before fame ever touched him. And maybe that is why later in life he held so tightly to the image of a clean, strong cowboy. He started as a boy watching money disappear and learning that a smile could hide worry. The $8 guitar that changed everything. In the middle of that hard childhood, Gene found one thing that felt like his own music. He started singing in church when he was still very young. His mother also had him sing psalms at home. Those songs gave him comfort, especially when his family had little else to hold on to. Then came the guitar. In 1919, when Gene was about 12, he saved exactly 8 from hay work on Uncle Cal's farm. He was earning about 5 cents for each bale. Someday she worked through around 100 bales in the heat. For his family, 8 was not small money. It could have helped with food or basic needs, but Gene saved it anyway and ordered a guitar from the Sears Roebuck catalog. That choice changed the whole direction of his life. He began playing at a cafe in Tioga and at school events. By his mid-teens, he could earn about $1 a night in tips. That may not sound like much now, but for Gene, it proved something his voice and guitar could bring money into his hands. He mixed hymns, popular songs, and anything people wanted to hear. Music slowly became more than escape. It became the first real door out. The night Will Rogers heard Gene sing. In 1925, Gene left the family ranch with only a high school education. He became a telegraph operator for the St. Louis-San Francisco Railway in Chelsea, Oklahoma. He earned around $35 a month. To pass the lonely night shifts, Gene would strum his guitar and sing softly. Sometimes he yodeled to stay awake. Sometime between 1926 and 1928, the famous Oklahoma cowboy humorist Will Rogers walked into the depot to send a telegram. Rogers heard Gene singing. He liked what he heard, and told him that a voice like that belonged on the radio, not hidden behind telegraph wires. That one comment planted a dream. In 1928, Gene went to New York looking for a break. It did not go well. He found no real work, spent the little money he had, and came back to Oklahoma, broke and embarrassed. But that failure did not end the dream. It made him tougher. By late 1928, He was singing on KVOO radio in Tulsa as a yodeling cowboy. At live events, crowds could reach 1,000 people or more. His pay rose to around $50 to $100 a week, far more than his railroad wages. Suddenly, the poor farm boy who sang during lonely shifts was becoming someone people came to see. The song that made America listen. On October 9, 1929, Gene recorded in New York with Jimmy Long. Their tracks included My Dreaming of You and My Alabama Home. This happened only weeks before the stock market crash. The whole country was about to be thrown into fear and poverty, but Gene kept moving. In 1929, he signed with Columbia Records. Then came the record that changed everything. In 1931, Gene and Jimmy Long recorded That Silver-Haired Daddy of Mine. The song carried family, regret, hardship, and longing. During the Great Depression, people felt every word. It sold around 500,000 copies early on, then grew even bigger. Gene was no longer just a radio act. He was becoming a national star. Ina May knew the man before the myth. As Gene's career rose, his personal life changed too. In early 1932, he visited Jimmy Long in Springfield, Missouri. There he met Jimmy's niece, Ina May Spivey, a 21-year-old aspiring music teacher. Gene was about 24. He fell for her quickly and said he was going to marry her. After a short courtship, they eloped on April 1, 1932, in St. Louis. Because it was April Fool's Day, some people thought the news was a joke. But the marriage was real. Ina became more important to Gene's story than many fans knew. She encouraged him to move toward Hollywood in 1934. Years later, she encouraged him to record Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer in 1949, even though Gene was unsure about it. That choice became one of the biggest music decisions of his life. But while Ina helped shape parts of his career, their marriage also had a quiet emptiness. They had no children. And as the years passed, another woman's name began to appear in the shadows. Gale Davis was more than just his star. Gale Davis was born Betty Jean Grayson on October 5, 1925, in Little Rock, Arkansas. Her father was a small-town physician, and Gail had been singing and dancing since childhood. After graduating from Little Rock High School, she studied at Harcum Junior College for Girls in Bryn Mawr, Pennsylvania. She later completed her education at the University of Texas at Austin. Gail became an actress and singer, but her biggest fame came from playing Annie Oakley in the 1950s television series named after the famous sharpshooter. Gene Autry produced the show, and he called her the perfect Western actress. That line mattered because it showed how strongly he believed in her screen image. To the public, her connection to Gene looked professional. He was the powerful cowboy star and producer. She was the actress leading one of his biggest television projects. But in Gene's world, where loyalty, family values, and cowboy honor were part of the brand, even private closeness could start whispers. The affair that cracked the cowboy image. Those whispers grew stronger because later accounts described Gene's relationship with Gale Davis as more than professional. During Gene's long marriage to Ina May, stories claimed he had a sustained affair with Gail. One source described Gene's pursuit of co-star Gale Davis and said it led to an affair of several years, to the chagrin of his wife. The recently unearthed 1954 letter from Davis, which made headlines just last month, confirms the emotional depth of the relationship. "He would send horses to my ranch just to have an excuse to see me," she wrote. Jackie Ina knew. She never said a word. That was the saddest part. The affair did not seem to damage their careers at the time, but it changed how people looked back at him. He could sing about home, faith, and family while still living with choices that did not match what fans believed. His drinking also became part of that complicated picture. Showing up drunk, reportedly, led Wrigley's Gum, the sponsor of his radio show, to pull the plug. Howard Cable later remembered a 1956 show where Gene entered on Champion while singing Back in the Saddle Again, then suddenly fell off the horse in front of the audience. Mothers complained. Later, Gene reportedly thanked the producer for helping him turn his life around. So, the Gale Davis story was not just about one rumored affair. It became part of a bigger question. Who was Gene Autry when the white hat came off? the cowboy who fought to own his name. Gene was not only a singer and actor, he thought like an owner. In 1947, he left Republic for Columbia Pictures, where he had his own production unit. In 1950, he began producing and starring in the Gene Autry Show on CBS through his Flying A production studio. In 1951, he formed Flying A Productions to make westerns under his own control. That same year, he went to court against Republic over television rights. Gene wanted to stop Republic from selling or licensing 54 of his old films for television without permission. The legal fight dragged on, but Gene had seen the future clearly. Television reruns could be worth a fortune. By the late 1960s, when Republic was weak, he bought the rights and negatives to his old Republic films. That gave him control over home movie reprints, videotapes, and later discs. His lawsuit showed how early he understood television. Many performers watched old work earn money for others. Gene did not want his old work used without him having a say. The empire that put Gene in every home. Even after stepping away from movies, Gene kept building. His television years ran strong from 1950 to 1956. Champion, his horse, also had radio and television series of his own. Gene's name spread through more than films and records. Back in 1937, the Kenton Hardware Company began making Gene Autry cast iron cap guns. They sold for 50 cents each and became very popular. By 1939, 2 million had been sold, and Gene received a share of the money. He was also featured in comic strips and comic books through the 1940s and 1950s. Dell published Gene Autry comics, later Gene Autry, and Champion, making it the longest-running cowboy actor comic by issue count. Gene also stayed tied to rodeo. In 1979, he entered the Pro Rodeo Hall of Fame. Children did not just watch Gene. They played as Gene. His name moved into toy boxes, comics, rodeos, and family memories. How the singing cowboy built a fortune. Gene's business life became even bigger than his screen image. In the late 1950s, he started Challenge Records. Its biggest hit was Tequila by the Champs in 1958. He also invested in real estate and hotels. By 1964, he owned the Mark Hopkins Hotel in San Francisco, the Hotel Continental in Hollywood, and property in Palm Springs. His media holdings grew too. He owned radio stations, including KSFO in San Francisco and KMPC in Los Angeles. In 1982, he sold Los Angeles television station KTLA for $245 million. But one of his most famous business moves came through baseball. In 1960, he became the founding owner of the Los Angeles Angels. The team later moved to Anaheim and became the California Angels. In 1995, he sold a controlling interest to the Walt Disney Company. Gene had turned a cowboy image into a massive business empire. By then, the cowboy had become a brand built through records, hotels, stations, land, baseball, and film rights. But even with all that money and control, one part of his life stayed painfully empty. He had no children to inherit it. The final twist in Gene Autry's private life. Ina May Spivey stayed with Gene for nearly 48 years. She had seen the hard climb, the films, the war years, the television work, the money, the rumors, and the lonely parts of fame. She died of cancer on May 19, 1980. Gene was 72. Her death broke him in a quiet way. People around him saw a loneliness they had not seen before. He withdrew from society and carried the grief privately. Then, just 14 months later, on July 19, 1981, he married Jackie Evelyn Elam. Gene was 73. Jackie was 39. The 34-year age gap drew attention. Jackie had first met Gene in 1964 at Security Pacific Bank in Palm Springs. Their first date was around New Year's Eve 1979. Gene's first date in decades. Like his first marriage, this marriage produced no children. As the years passed, the honors kept coming. He was inducted into the Country Music Hall of Fame in 1969, received the Golden Plate Award in 1983, and entered the Oklahoma Hall of Fame in 1991. He also had something no other star has matched: 5 Hollywood Walk of Fame stars for radio, recording, motion pictures, television, and live performance. By the end of his career, he had recorded around 635 songs, made 93 films, appeared in 91 television episodes, and built decades of radio success. Gene died on October 2, 1998, at his Studio City home from lymphoma. He had turned 91 just 3 days earlier. At the time, Forbes ranked him among America's 400 richest people. Yet, the detail that lingered was simple. He had no direct family line waiting to inherit everything. Much of his estate flowed into foundations, and the Autry Museum of the American West in Los Angeles, which just announced a major expansion in early 2026, adding a new wing dedicated to the real voices of the West, including a section on the complexities of its white hat heroes. Jackie became the main steward of the Autry name and the Autry Foundation. Gale Davis died in 1997, a year before Gene, having never publicly confirmed the affair in her lifetime. But that private letter, now public, finally gave her side of the story. In it, she wrote, "I loved him, and I loved the secret, but secrets have a way of outliving you." So, what do you think matters more in the end? The clean image Gene Autry gave the world, or the complicated private life he left behind? And with no children to carry his name forward, do you think Jackie was the right person to protect Gene Autry's legacy? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more incredible stories from Hollywood's fascinating history. See you next time.